In this video, we're going to take a look at the Finance tab in the client chart. So first of all, we can get here by clicking on the magnifying glass anywhere within the app, or if we're in the Clients tab, clicking on the client's name. So that deploys the client chart, and we're going to come here to the Finance tab. So looking at the Finance tab, first of all, what you may notice if you've already been working with a client, you might notice some uninvoiced items. So we're going to start at the top with contracts. So a contract, it could be a contract that you have set up with another funder. It could be that you've predetermined with the family a certain sum of money that you're going to be allocating to services. So you can go ahead here and self-client, that's automatically picked. So that would be in the case where you are, the client that you're working with has said, Kate, we've got $500 to work with you, and that will keep track of it. The reference number, if you're working with a specific funder, most of them have reference numbers that connect that child to their account or that client to their account. And so insurance companies, government agencies will supply you with a reference number. If it's a family or a client, don't worry about it. You don't need to fill this number in. We can go ahead and put in the amount of money that is being allocated, and it's going to automatically indicate the availability. And we do have to put in a start and end date. Again, if you're dealing with a funder, it's very likely that there will be a start and end date. If you're dealing with a family, it could be a calendar year with an insurance company, or they might be saying, hey, let's use this amount for the next 3 months. So we'll go ahead and just put in a couple months. Okay, so once we have that set up, then you want to take a look at which services are going to be provided to this client. So the services, you'll remember, we set up in My Office and Services, and we specified what prices were going to be attached to those services. Funders or insurance companies that are only going to provide certain services. And so this is just to keep your team on track, to make sure that you're not including services that aren't supported by this particular funder. So let's say, this is, and we can always come back and add more here. And then you just want to consider the fee that it's lining up with the funder. So in this situation, we're looking at, billing the client. And so it's likely to go to whatever fee you had established for your service in the service tab. But if you have an agreed upon decision with this family that might be different, then you can go ahead and change those here. So we're going to save. And then what you'll see is these are the services that are offered. They're being covered at 100%, and that we have a balance. So let's confirm that. And now when we go through and make our invoice, we're just going to pick these 3 options. We're going to add them to the invoice. What we're going to look at first is who is this going to be billed to? So are we billing to the client? Are we billing to one of the guardians? Or are we billing against a specific claim? So for this example that we're talking about today, this is billing against the self. So the difference here is that we have a predefined amount of money that has been allocated. And so that's why we're not specifically going with the client or one of the guardians. So it's just reminding me that the fees might adjust based on that funder. All right, so now that this invoice has been created, we're going to go ahead and submit. Now that that invoice has been saved, we have a couple of options. You can choose the pay button. So you can choose which way that this client paid for this invoice. So we're going to go ahead and say debit, set payment. All right, so it is now showing me that the invoice has been paid, and you can share this invoice. You can export it. You can share it via the client portal. You can just hit the X. So if we come down to the bottom, what we're gonna notice, you just gotta click on this button here because it hides the paid invoices just so that the bottom here doesn't get too cluttered. And you'll see that this invoice has been paid. So if you created the invoice and you are at this step here, and you weren't choosing to have that be marked as paid right away, and we're just going to go ahead and submit it, and then we're closing out because you're waiting for payment, then you can come to the submitted button. So that's letting you know that that's the stage that this current invoice is at, and you can now mark it as paid, or you can revert it to a draft. All right, so that is how we handle grants, creating an invoice, and marking an invoice as paid from the client portal. So we're gonna save that. And next I'm gonna step through the billing tab. When you arrive at the billing tab, it's unfiltered. And so you're going to see events from every client, and it's showing them to us from the furthest away appointment to the most recent. Okay, so the most recent uninvoiced items at the bottom. And so that's going to look at uninvoiced items. Then we can look at items that have been invoiced. Take a look at specific invoices. So these are the invoices that currently remain in draft. These are the invoices that have currently been submitted. And these are the invoices that have been paid. So this is the one that we just did, and this is a previous one. So this gives you some more global information that's not client specific, and allows you to pull in a little more quickly, you know, who's paid, who's at the submitted stage, and where are things at. Okay, so hopefully that answers most of the questions that you have. I'm happy to hear your feedback as we continue to improve our Getting Started series so that we can support you in getting started with Therabyte. Thanks for joining me.